This is day 756 of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. I just want to come and share more of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Please contact me directly. Be greatly appreciated. They were doing Simon Tov Samach Zayin Ches to Tezvav. Ches. Shana Shodik Shon B'Shas Katzir Al Arem Shabasados. A year in which much rain fell at the time of the harvest on the piles which are in the field. To the point that some of the grain, some of the stalks on the piles started sprouting. Nevertheless, you don't have to assume that, or could be concerned that the majority of the grain became fermented. Because that's the case with every matzah. At least you never have a time in which rain does not fall on the piles. Rather, be the rice that you follow the rove. Most of them do not become fermented. Even those piles which you say that it did rain upon them. We are lenient concerning them. Maybe the rain only penetrated the top stalks, not the ones in the middle. And this is clear to the naked eye that this is what happens. Even they did penetrate, so maybe they did not become fermented. The primary leniency is this is certainly the case. Since it's clear to the eye that the fermentation does not penetrate into the pile, because there are no sprouts, no sprouting occurring deeper inside the pile. You test. So if you find split, cracked open, wheat kernels, which is a sign they became chametz. Even though we find some like that, we don't say all they became chametz. Also, those ones which are not cracked are permitted. Because it's prevalent in time of rain. The top level of the pile, and the bottom level become fermented and become cracked. Water does not get to the middle of the pile at all. If you can't, it's hard to separate out the cracked ones. If there's as long as there's 60 times non-fermented grain relative to the fermented grain, and grind for Pesach, then Pesach is but the b'shishim. Most years you don't even have to check almost, because clearly there's more than 60. Mishnah says, nevertheless, you should remove those which are cracked, or that you should be sure that there's 60 opposite them. So I guess he holds you really have to check all the time. Because the Arukh HaShulchan again says, it's clear there's 60 times the non-fermented wheat relative to the chametz. It's an exceptional year. A lot of rain. It's clearly required checking the rows to check if there's 60 or not. If there isn't 60, you can add. Since it's still heter before Pesach, we saw that. You can be mavata deliberately. But without checking, also that year it's also. And this is widespread custom. They bring several fistfuls of the grain. But the rabbi checks them. If in these samples there's 60 times the amount which sprouted, the hechsher gives the hechsher. If the rav has not checked it, without a hechsher we don't use flour on Pesach. We use flour on Pesach. And there is supervision on both the wheat and on the grinding. And now that they bring wheat from a distance on railroads, the There's a chiyuv also to have kashrus hashgacha, oversight also on the transportation. Shikasu sasakim karoi. They should cover the sacks properly. That's an obligation, evidently, as rabbis, and that's appropriate for us to do. And the hechsher comes from the rabbi where the grinding takes place. Presumably, it's incumbent upon him to clarify that before the grain got to him, there were no problems. There's a statement, something comes chametz, well, it's still connected to the ground. This seems that even when it's so connected, you can still come to become chametz. This is when the grain has been completely dry, and they no longer have to derive nourishment from the ground. It's as if they're sitting in a vessel. They're going to come to become chametz when rain falls upon them. But excuse me. Nikar is Simone Achimot Tzena. We know how to tell that they're chametz. When they're sprouting, Katana, is kind of a little I forget what those things are called at the end of the stalk. The hairy thing. It's the head of the stalk. I'm blanking what the word is. Only swachik means bakeh or becomes soft or cracked. This you have to have a training. You have to have shimush. You have to understand it well and know it. Therefore, because there's a possibility of becoming chametz even by mechubel karka, the custom is to cut to harvest the matzah for shmura matzah. I mean the grain for shmura matzah, but when it's still not fully grown. But on the other hand, it says if you cut it down when they're still literally green, nearly Oshan takes issue with that. Because at that point they're very hard to grind and to knead. And the truth is, he says, at that time they're still very moist, and therefore, they're more likely to become chametz. Shouldn't harvest them until they are ripe, and they are white, ripe and white. Don't wait until they're completely dry, because then you have that question of maybe chimutz mechubar will actually then start taking place. After you harvest them, take them immediately to the silo. Yeah, if you saw sheish boros meleim chitim, a Jew has holes in the ground which are full of wheat. And he's afraid that maybe at the bottom of the pit there are cracked kernels of grain because of the wheat, because of the moisture of the pit and the ground. But bitam amosagi. All he has to do is mevato them. The gam became embe mechimutz gomer, because the truth is that even those which are cracked open, they're not fully chametz yet. Ela ipush, they're just slightly fermented. They have said, and they can no longer be used, obviously, to plant again. They're a loss from that perspective. Which because the Rash was abachuva. But saying nogim korkomini was Pesach by us. Custom is any way to sell all the produce Pesach, all the grain basement is chametz at the time it's chametz. Plus the time it's even tough ches v'nachonu. That's the right thing to do. Your base kosva tuba shulchan receive ches. To shulchan right dvash shel enam Yehudim emach zikim bo isulomar mezuyafu. Honey which comes from non-Jews. We don't assume it's also to say that they introduced foreign substances into it. But also Pesach Yidin Pesach Akam L'shono. Klamar, meaning Shun Yesho Sim, there's those who answer honey, Lefishim Marbi Marmo Kemosos, because they're mixing it flour, a fine flour, Zemuden Chashash. That's why we have to say we're not concerned about that. Feel Irvu Havi Meperos, even they didn't mix, it's still grain with Meperos, with fruit juice. And to be concerned, maybe they put water as well. So it'd be water with fruit juice, and then becomes nuksha, becomes chametz quicker. We don't have to take into account such a remote concern that maybe they mix in two other substances, honey, flour, and water. Because Rosh Hashuva, Rosh also writes V'Shem Rabbeinu Yeno that the Dvash Ma'apech Kodesh Vashisar B'Levash. Honey turns everything which is mixed into it into honey. That's what that means. So I guess it's a reason to ask her. He's saying anything which gets mixed into the honey becomes like the honey, and you won't be able to distinguish it as being also. And therefore, all the year, so that's the case. So, the entire year. As people say that they mix unkosher meat into the honey. Let's be concerned about this, and let's answer altogether. So even if it's mixed, advash mahavkol advash. So the answer is that no, the honey actually turns it into honey, which is a very difficult thing to say. Acharosh ba'atzmo beperek vav, the brachas kasav davar zed tzorich raya. Need evidence. So it's alchemical reaction that everything becomes honey when it's mixed into honey. Ayin sham. Yusham so bad. Kosham before shlei lister says no good explicitly. It's shown Marisham Tesser China Havale Dvash Muzia Besoiles. He had honey which was intermingled with fine flour. Usher shall already money. Came out some money. I'm like, I have to eradicate it. Ayin sham. That's Dafkas toast. If he should also see most of Abicham is going, but possible says specifically talking about where they introduce solas, fine flour, because it's moistened before they grind it. Having chametz ugamor, and therefore it's absolute chametz. In brackets is here, but so still as far as Rabbeinu Yonah, this contradicts Rabbeinu Yonah, who says that anything becomes honey. But perhaps it takes a long time until the honey turns that into honey. Whereas by Chamina it was immediately before Pesach. Besides that, perhaps there should be honey which we use and date honey which they use. It's not clear. Rabbeinu Rama. So Rama writes a minhag b'nei shelo lechol dvash rak oser shemavim b'chavis mina kaveret shosim mena mashkish kli med akam shonu. The custom in our countries is only not to eat honey on Pesach, only that the ones they bring in a jug directly from the hive, from which they make a beverage called med. From this honey, people normally make a beverage. And this honey can eat. I feel bad even if it's not a beverage, even still for money. I had some people ask to eat any type of honey because it might get mixed up with those in which they've mixed in flour. Those who want to explain that's what Ramah means. Says you can't eat honey, but you can only make honey water. Not to eat it outright. Because you might come to get mixed up. It says it's very difficult for us to be machmir and make decrees on our own. And therefore, it's what we wrote. It's like we wrote that even if it's plain simple honey, hasn't been yet in the meat, it's still mutter. The Mishnah Bura says in our countries the minhag is to be lenient. Nevertheless, you have to know the minhag in different places because there's some places that they even put bread into the hive at the time when they are harvesting it. Don't know why, but there's many places there. Yudal v'achshav afal pi shamanu bebiru she'em arvin kemach. And now today, even though we have heard clearly that they don't mix in flour anymore in the honey. Become and a kohen vashman. You never you don't buy honey from a non-Jew. Rak zeshimur v'adayin b'shava. Only if it's still honeycomb. It's mixed in with the wax. But it's made like little home, like little brooms. Honeycomb. Shekain lochim asam curse. That's how they take it from the hive. Became mashkein lipids. For dvash hatov shazam yatzmo. This is specially, I guess, outstanding honey, which flows from itself. And has nothing which gets mixed in. Shumat tarovas kalenu, because if you mix something into it, it will get ruined. And we're not suffer commercial loss. You won't be able to sell it. After mechza mekach, even at half price, and they should and then of what it was when it was completely clean. And people who know honey know this very well. I was talking about assume the Pesach, but generic honey. This only the lipids is mutter, but generic honey. We're asking Pesach. We're going to start with Pesach. Nevertheless, if it got mixed up on Pesach in a foodstuff, and it's here machal fig shein shishim, we don't ask that foodstuff even though it's in 60 because it's a very remote concern. Mr. Brewer says, in terms of honey mixed with sugar, those are machal to asif. There wasn't 60 in the cooked dish corresponding to that. Never smokum hesuba or kurtem simchas yontif. There's room to be lenient. Back to Shalom became called Paris Yavashim. So only any dry fruit. She's burnt on the Bamister. We'll see that our customers are awesome. We don't answer dry fruit if it fell into a cooked dish. And so we said by kidneys that if the kidneys falls in, it doesn't answer. Lasos med shows seen Pesach to make this special beverage, this honey kind of beverage from becoming a dvash from all types of honey. Even if there's something which is fermented, this bato kind Pesach, it's okay because butter before Pesach. Avachomay in levasho made dvash rock with vasha bami kaveres. It says don't cook honey because you can ferment whatever flour is left in there. Only you burn honey, it becomes directly from the hive. Mishnah writes also that with the meat we assume that there was bought the b'shishim before Pesach. Never somebody was machmir not to make meat except from honey which comes with the comb. Tava bracha. Test vav. Sugar. As to our best knowledge, as Yosem is on say ein bo shum chashash kimutz. There's no possible fermentation involved. Shakon asay de kito. Everything is made by steaming. Come directly yachid al Pesach tzukar. Nonetheless, the custom is to designate a special sugar for Pesach, and that's a Pesach which is made for Pesach. Apiash gachas tam b'chacham. Based on the Kashus give a certification of a Tam Chacham, a Mashgiach Fabric, who is the Mashgiach at the factory. The no Salem Hechsher, he puts his Hechsher on them. But the sell non-Jew can even sell sugar of the entire year. Because not it's a chumrah, which are machmir, that for ourselves, but not in terms of selling. You sell you sell the normal everyday sugar to the non-Jew. I lost my place. I have to sell all sorts of dried fruit. Levad had zuckeres. I guess this is a type of candy. Sheish b'hem tarovas chamash, a mixture kemach, which are a mixture of flour, like Twizzlers. Hosumach here now there's another sell. The afshazel made peros, even though it's considered made peros. Nevertheless, Elu had sukares, and pshutim. They have a simple composition. The carb sheish behem gam kitzas teruvas mayim, and it's likely that they also have some water mixed in, which can definitely cause chametz. U'mocher some chametz, so you sell it together with the chametz. Says the brackets. Mashkasa Rabbi Ramad the tzukar asur gam b'shia. Now to leave a sukkah in your house. The tzukar kandil mutar, which sounds like a special type of sugar is permitted. But Kosu's laughing. They already wrote this mistake. It's the opposite. There's no reason to extend the discussion like the Achroni did. Behot sukkar, hot sugar. Valech michabis, and the ones that are surrounded by barrels. Kozeh Bezman, that was all during their time. Akshab Bakon said, Befagib, and everything was made in factory. Hagdolim, large factories. They rokita by steam. And there is no suspicion, the way it's set up, of there being any chametz, a potential chametz involved.